The following is an Outdoor Channel original production.
A hiker, alone on a high Sierra peak, gets crushed by a boulder. Infection is spreading fast through his shattered leg.
Anytime I moved the leg, there was going to be pus or blood coming out.
With no food, he must make a risky decision.
I was concerned that the leg was in such bad shape that I was going to need to move.
And the only way he could was to crawl.
I was at that point where I'm going to have to rescue myself.
It's a mission he cannot fail. In the wild, when things go bad, they go bad fast. Without warning, your life can hang by a thread. Adventurer and survivor Craig DiMartino fought back from his own wilderness disaster to reclaim his life. Now Craig meets other courageous outdoorsmen who beat the odds and return from their own fight to survive.
Hi, I'm Craig DiMartino. Here's a question. If you were badly injured, would you have the knowledge and the guts to work through the pain and do whatever it takes to save your own life? Greg Hine answered that question for himself the hard way. Climbing to the summit of Mount Goddard in the Sierras was the easy part. But when a boulder came crashing down and crushed his leg, surviving for the next 6 days would challenge his emotional and physical resources to the very limits of what one man can endure.
Since finishing up his last semester at college, Greg Hine had been looking forward to a 4th of July weekend hike in Kings Canyon National Park in the Sierras of California.
I always loved being in the outdoors. Hiking was always the thing that I loved more than anything else. I've spent the better part of my adult life in the outdoor industry, raft guiding, cave guiding, and just hiking and climbing.
He planned a 4-day hike that included reaching the summit of Mount Goddard.
I studied the route, but having never been out there, it was sight unseen and it's a super easy walk up to Goddard for the most part.
Greg reached the summit on Saturday.
Then it was just a decision on where to come down. And that's the sticking point for me on the plan, was which way I wanted to go.
Greg had misplaced his map on the way up, so he was winging it as to which direction to descend. Then, as he cautiously made his way down, a huge rock pulled loose from above and crushed Greg's leg as it careened past.
I never saw the rock again, but I was on my butt sliding down the mountain. I had my backpack on, so it was kind of keeping me upright.
When he was able to stop sliding, Greg knew he was in bad shape. In medical terms, his leg had a compound fracture. Both his tibia and fibula bones were broken.
The condition of my leg was enough to scare me, and it hurt like hell.
Greg had taken wilderness first aid, so he knew how to splint his leg. He also had to slow down the bleeding. The loss of blood could lead to loss of consciousness and hypothermia. And then he would be in real trouble. But he didn't count on what happened overnight.
He said you started to smell it. You started to get this odor, which would indicate gangrene or infection or something bad.
I don't want to deal with this, but if I don't deal with this, it's going to be a lot worse for me. Right. It goes gangrene. It's really difficult to fight that. I realized that anytime I moved the leg, there was going to be trauma to the wound. There was going to be some pus or blood mixture coming out. And I luckily had a snow patch next to me, about 15, 20 feet away.
Greg realized all he had to clean his wound with was snow. He hoped the cold would help cauterize it a little, and as it melted, wash out some of the bloody pus. But the snow patch was probably 15 to 20 feet away. His leg was throbbing, and he couldn't walk. The only way to get there would be to crawl, if he could manage it. A 5-minute crawl felt like an eternity. Greg brushed off the top of the snow to get to a clean layer. He used ice crystals to scour the wound. He told Craig this was an important moment in his survival effort.
It's getting infected, so now I've got to start cleaning it, and it just adds something to the experience. But in doing that, it kept me active in my own survival, and that was really helpful in that regard, to be forced to think more about it and to do something to try to keep myself as healthy as possible.
You're being proactive.
Yeah, and it helps staying alive in that regard.
This patch of snow also became Greg's source of hydration.
I did not have any food or water. I utilized the snow patch to put snow in the hood of my poncho. I would use the sun to melt the snow for water.
During the day, he'd crawl away from the cold, wet snow to stay warm in the sun. Then he'd crawl back to clean his infected leg. But besides tending his wound, he tried to move as little as possible to conserve his energy. He stared out at the view and knew he was far away from any rescue. Periodically, he blew his whistle, trying to attract attention. 3 short blasts. The universal distress signal. A desperate call for help.
I think that's an interesting thing.
This one piece will make 52 layers.
Watch on mobile devices or the big screen. All for free. No subscription required. Download Veely now.
Hiker Greg Hines' leg has been shattered by a falling boulder. Now he's stranded in the high Sierras with an excruciating compound fracture and infection spreading rapidly through his body.
With a compound fracture, the pain is at times very pronounced, but eventually my brain did shut off most of the pain that I was experiencing, so it was just something that I had to endure.
His brain also did him another favor.
You know, I wasn't hungry at all. I can barely go 6 hours without eating and having hunger pains, and never had one hunger pain.
He did his best to conserve his energy and waited out his rescue. He assumed his dad would report him missing sooner than later.
Hey, Greg!
When Monday rolled around, it wasn't so much concern as it was upset. He wasn't home when he said he was going to be home.
Greg?
And that made me a little angry. So I gave him Monday night and Tuesday as a grace period. I didn't think that anything was wrong. It was just that he was taking extra time.
The accident happened Saturday. It was now Tuesday, but Greg still felt like he was doing the right thing.
The reason why I stayed put was that I know that if you get lost or injured in the mountains, you don't start walking off and making it harder for people to try to find you. So I was thinking, well, it'd be easy. I just hole up here, until someone finds me.
Then, a potentially deadly turn for the worse.
Woke up in the middle of the night, kind of in agony. I couldn't flex my ankle, and so I was concerned that the leg was atrophying or the muscles or the tendons were in such bad shape that I was going to need to move. Not being a patient person and then the leg freezing on me, I was now at that point where I'm going to have to rescue myself.
Greg decided to try to crawl down to Davis Lake in the morning, where he believed he would have a better chance of being spotted. Without his missing map, he wasn't exactly sure which direction to head. Since he would have to crawl every inch, he was going to need some guts and luck to get there. 4 days after his accident, Greg Hine decided to try to crawl to a location where he believed he would be easier to find. With his broken leg pulled up in his makeshift system of ties, Greg used his free arms and good leg to very slowly make his way down the slope.
If I was a little too jerky, scooting down the boulder field that I was coming down, or got going too fast and stopped, the shift of my hips and the bones let me know, and so that was painful.
As he came into a grassy area, he smelled the familiar scents.
Along the way, I happened to find some moths and some crickets. I had always heard about people eating them and was thinking, well, I might as well just try them out while I'm here. So I just took off the back legs and the wings, knowing that those are the things you need to do so it doesn't get stuck in your throat. And I just ate it.
So what's a cricket taste like?
Nutty, I would say. Not raw almondy taste, but somewhere along those lines.
Bugs are a good source of protein, but they weren't going to make up for Greg's lack of food for days. It took Greg several hours to crawl 1.6 miles to the source of Lake Davis. Exhausted from his crawl, he lay down to nap. His dad, mistakenly thinking he had to wait 2 days before reporting a missing person, when there is no waiting period, only called the sheriff that Wednesday afternoon.
Yes, I need to report a missing person.
Got a phone call maybe an hour or so later from a sheriff sergeant.
Oh, he was pretty jovial. I mean, he was excited about going hiking.
Asking just a litany of questions.
Well, no, I mean,
Most of the questions, at least initially, were very subtly framed around Greg's state of mind when he left.
I mean, he's always pretty happy.
How did he say goodbye?
He said, we'll see you later.
Did it sound like a final goodbye? I quickly caught on that what they were wanting to find out at that point was, did he go up there to end his life?
Okay, thanks so much for your help. I appreciate it.
My supervisor notified me that I needed to call Fresno County Sheriff Department because they were taking an initial report of a person who was overdue, and their itinerary took them into Kings Canyon National Park.
Looks like I found the vehicle. No backpack in the back seat.
After speaking with Fresno County deputies,
Heading back in.
I learned that the vehicle was still at the trailhead of Florence Lake.
Hello, this is Doug.
Melanie Lloyd from the Park Service called Wednesday afternoon, probably about 4 o'clock.
Yes, he was carrying a Leatherman.
Asking what kind of gear Greg had taken with him.
Trekking poles.
Shoe pattern, whether he was armed with a knife or gun.
He had enough food for the weekend.
How much food he had taken with him, how much water he had taken with him.
Okay, I sure appreciate your help.
Again, very, very thorough. As Wednesday night rolled around, I didn't want to get melancholy and think, well, I might possibly lose my son. I had utmost confidence in him, but every once in a while some thoughts would sneak in that maybe he was hurt.
While Greg's dad was having his own distressing thoughts, Greg was having his most unsettling night since the accident.
You knew your sister's birthday was happening. What was going through your mind at that time?
She's had some pretty traumatic experiences on her birthday, and last thing I wanted was her brother, that she's grown up with, to have died, on or near her birthday. And that was the only part I did cry. It was the lowest point that I had, and I was like, oh no, not Sis's birthday. I want to survive because I want to not die on my sister's birthday, but also, I want to see loved ones and friends. And it sounds funny, but life's more beautiful.
Yeah.
I mean, you appreciate everything more, and to love and to be loved it means more to you.
Right.
Newly motivated, Greg made a bed for himself of dried grasses. Keeping busy kept the sad thoughts out of his head as he faced another day. Thursday morning, 9 rescue teams were inserted into the field by helicopter.
What our intention was to search certain trails that we suspected would be the most likely route that Greg Hine would have taken, and also to set up trail blocks at certain trail junctions.
After we found Greg's signature in the Summit book, that enabled us to focus on those areas north of Mount Goddard. And one of those areas happened to be the basin around Davis Lake.
So on Thursday, I ended up waking up and being pretty exhausted from the crawl down. My forearms felt pretty shot, and I was trying to plan out the day. I was like, well, maybe I should just hold on here, recover my strength, and then Friday move. And so I was just kind of being lazy that morning. Then mid-morning, I started hearing the chopper. As soon as I heard the park's chopper, it was just, how do I get noticed or recognized? At that point, I was like, oh, shoot, I should do something. So I tried to head to this rock so that I could wave this bivy sack around. I was in this limbo of trying to get a rock in my bivy sack, to twirl it around, to be noticed, to throw it up in the air. It happened too fast and I couldn't get there soon enough. At that point, that was the first time I stood. That was pretty traumatic for the wound and painful for my leg.
The search and rescue helicopter had come within 100 yards of Greg, but then peeled off, not having seen him. Craig couldn't imagine being in that situation.
The helicopters start buzzing Mount Goddard, and you see this happening, but they're not seeing you. And to me, that would be just frustrating and soul-crushing all in one breath.
The struggles and the stress of, well, they should see me. I'm visible. I'm doing all the things I can do to be found, and I still can't be found. And so as the day wore on, I finally was like, hell, I don't care anymore. I'm gonna take a nap, and if a helicopter comes by, I'm just gonna sleep. You know, like, I'm just that tired.
Greg didn't nap for long. He could hear helicopters throughout the day, and he would try to stand to draw their attention.
I got within 200 feet of one helicopter. There was a second helicopter that came in the afternoon, and from what I found out, they were just dropping search crews off, populating the potential search areas where I might be.
Right here. Finally, after 6 days, stranded, starving, and suffering, Greg was spotted.
We're search and rescue. I'm Ryan.
Oh, it's so good to see you.
Mr. Hine was located as the final search team was being inserted into Davis Lake.
Thank you. Okay, I'm gonna check your pulse real quick.
I'm gonna call it in. Okay.
Am I alive?
You're alive.
I was excited to talk to someone, to be the first person I'd talked to in 6 or 7 days.
They found him
Okay, I got you guys.
relatively in good health, considering the 5 days that he had spent
2, 3.
in the wilderness with a broken leg.
They've dropped 2 search and rescue teams in on the side of Goddard. Great search.
So we drove up. We're talking to the sheriff's sergeant up there.
Okay, but it's a big mountain.
They're gonna be there last
One
night.
of the Park Service people said, we found him. Wonderful words to hear. I started to get excited, and I thought, well, wait a second, they did say what condition he was in.
Finish the sentence. Is he still living?
Just a moment, let me check.
So he was back on the radio,
Okay, Roger.
came back and said he's alive,
He's breathing. He's coherent. He's talking.
but he has a broken leg. Music to our ears. We saw Greg about 12:30, we told him how much we loved him. He said, "I love you guys too."
Greg's bones were reset after he left the hospital a little more than a week later. The survival of his leg was touch and go. He has had 6 surgeries and complications from infection.
So after 6 surgeries, I will be able to walk again. And it took an incident like this for me to look at life in a different perspective. That my actions definitely weigh on other people and to live more presently.
Just breathe, okay? Breathe.
I've gotten a little bit of patience for the first time in my life, and that's why I believe this is such a positive experience for myself.
Several things greatly assisted Greg in living through this ordeal. I believe first and foremost is he didn't panic. He recognized that he was going to be needing help. He stopped, reevaluated his condition. He didn't become overwhelmed. He didn't hit panic mode and deteriorate.
People hear your story and they're like, oh, I could never survive something like that. That guy is incredibly tough.
I never looked at myself as being tough or, extraordinary in any measure. Almost everybody, unless you're living in a mental bubble, you've experienced something that has tried you. Ours was more physical. Most everybody else's is more mental.
Right.
Anybody can survive as long as you want to.
Greg was lucky. He made some critical survival decisions that turned out to be the right ones. His leg was severely damaged and he's been on a long road to recovery, but he's determined, like I was, to return to doing the things he loves in the outdoors. That makes him a big winner in his fight to survive.
The following is an Outdoor Channel original production.
In Iraq, Marines are targeted by a deadly sniper. When one is hit, another throws the rule book aside.
Sometimes you have to do what you got to do to save your brother.
Now this Marine is in the same lethal crosshairs.
He hit me with a sledgehammer.
Nearly losing his own life. His rescue effort fails.
I got banged up.
He said I lost one of my guys.
The sniper's shots damage more than flesh and bone.
Gunfights prior to that, I was unstoppable. I was Superman.
Get back in the fight.
A Marine's battle to heal turns out to be this warrior's biggest fight to survive. In the wild, when things go bad, they go bad fast. Without warning, your life can hang by a thread. Adventurer and survivor Craig DiMartino fought back from his own wilderness disaster to reclaim his life. Now Craig meets other courageous outdoorsmen who beat the odds and return from their own fight to survive.
Hi, I'm Craig DiMartino. Outdoorsmen can find themselves in survival situations they never expected, as I did in my own climbing accident. But when a man chooses to go to war, he knows full well he may end up in a fight for his life. Marine Corps Master Sergeant Buck Doyle considered himself indestructible, and the Brotherhood of the Corps meant everything to him. But on his deployment to Anbar Province in February of 2007, Buck would discover that he was neither bulletproof nor emotionally invincible.
Early morning, May 26, 2007. A convoy of 4 Humvees moved along a road north of the Iraqi city of Fallujah. In the vehicles were a dozen U.S. Marines. These were members of an elite unit known as Recon Marines, an outfit akin to the Navy SEALs or the Army's Green Berets. They were heading to a remote forward operating base an hour or so away. Troops at that small outpost had been under attack by an elusive and deadly enemy sniper. And these Recon Marines had been tasked to assist in eliminating the sniper. Typically, Recon Marines conducted operations under cover of darkness. This unusual daylight mission meant the team needed to be extra vigilant. But their platoon sergeant Gunnery Sergeant Buck Doyle wasn't worried. He knew his Marines could handle the situation.
Come on. Move it, double time it. Come on, don't have a picnic up there. Let's go.
Probably trained with my platoon more than most people like me to.
Up!
When you attain the position of platoon sergeant,
Right side!
you're responsible for training those underneath you.
Good. Much quicker than last week. Let's go. Move it.
I wanted to be the best. So every time a team went out, I conducted the operation with them.
Kilo Talk, this is Pale Horse 2 over. We have eyes on the military.
That relationship is one that is very, very challenging. Never ending, never forgiving, 24/7, 365.
And you do start to develop a bond out there.
These guys, we're family. We're all brothers.
As far as he was concerned, the Marines that, his Marines, they were family too.
If there's anything you need to talk to me about, I mean anything, don't hesitate to call me, okay?
Understood.
Okay.
That bond that he had with his men was strong. It was unbreakable.
Gunny Doyle was riding in the last Humvee. At the head of the column, nearly 500 yards up the road, was the Humvee with Sergeant Nick Walsh. Walsh was Doyle's right-hand man. Although he didn't have as much experience as Doyle, Walsh did have proven communication and leadership skills, talents that Doyle had put to good use.
All right, gentlemen, bring it in. We have a 7-day op coming up. We will be conducting multiple tasks.
Everyone has their own personality, own strong suits.
Listen, I need you to knock your jaw jacking off. Get your heads in the game. This briefing is going to take some time, so just settle in and get comfortable.
With Nick, he was a communicator. He knew whenever I got frustrated about something or, I gotta get this done, he said, hey, I got it.
All right. I'll find you after we're finished.
Roger that, Sergeant Walsh.
After a while, I just looked at him and said, okay, you got it. He had a strength that I did not possess.
All right, guys. 7-day up. Lots of time in the vehicles. Cruz, I need you to get the vehicles ready. Copy?
So for him to be around me was always a plus.
Nick was actually in the Marine Corps prior, got out, spent a few years as a civilian, and then came back into the recon community. And we were lucky enough for him to join our platoon.
Not long into their drive to the outpost, the convoy encountered a tangle of civilian traffic. The Marines had driven into the Iraqi version of morning rush hour.
Sir, can you, I understand, can you please step back? Water.
Then, bad news. The lead vehicle, Sergeant Walsh's Humvee, collided with an Iraqi car.
Just want to make sure everyone's okay here. Okay.
Nobody was hurt, but the Humvee was not going anywhere.
Please stop. Kilo Talk. This is Pale Horse Actual. We have a down vehicle on the middle of Highway 1.
The platoon commander radioed back to camp and requested a recovery vehicle drive out and fetch their disabled Humvee.
Roger that. Standing by. Over.
Meanwhile, we're sitting there in the middle of the road with a down vehicle. We're sitting ducks.
To be in a stranded position, fully exposed in the daytime,
Sergeant Walsh, give me a sit rep.
Tie rod, Gunny. We ain't going anywhere.
that is the worst case scenario.
Let's see if we can fix this mess. Okay, I'm gonna post a vehicle both sides of Highway 1.
Doyle quickly dispersed the remaining vehicles and set up a security perimeter as they awaited the arrival of the recovery trucks.
Head on the swivel, everybody. Stay up on your comm. Let's move. All right,
The temperature started getting hot.
Let's go.
Over 100 degrees. When you're sitting out there in the middle of nowhere, 5 minutes is forever. So 4 hours, this seemed like eternity.
Kilo Talk, this is Pale Horse 2. I need an ETA on that recovery team.
Everyone's getting very impatient and antsy. Being out in the day, sitting on the road was the worst thing could happen to a bunch of recon Marines.
A team of recon Marines remained stranded out in the open on an Iraqi road.
I need an ETA on that recovery team.
For hours in sweltering heat, they've been awaiting the arrival of a recovery vehicle to haul away their disabled Humvee.
Sergeant Walsh, give me a sit rep.
Tie rod, Gunny. We ain't going anywhere.
The delay was excruciating for the Marines.
Head on the swivel, everybody.
Sitting ducks in the wide open desert with little options for cover.
Roger that. Standing by. Over.
Platoon commander called back and asked where are we at with the wrecking crew coming out to recover the vehicle.
Can you give us a heads up before that recovery team arrives on scene? Over.
So we said, hey, be sure to let us know when you leave Camp Fallujah so we can rearrange our formation and prepare to receive you.
But without any advance warning, the recovery team drove towards the Marines. They pulled into the formation and clustered their trucks around the disabled Humvee.
I quickly drove in that direction to receive him.
Doyle did not like what he saw. The clustered vehicles made for an enticing target.
Our recovery team were all parked right next to each other, nice and tight. There was no tactical dispersion.
Can you help me orchestrate this? We get this car out of here.
So you basically had a big mess. I get out of my vehicle.
This is why I asked for a heads up. The situation does not look good.
And I started, fortunately, telling people to get back in the vehicle.
Gunny, I got this.
Nick sees Gunny going off and tries to assist.
Move this car over here. Hey, guys.
Gunny.
The JAG, a Marine lawyer, stepped forward to help deal with the civilians.
The minute I engaged with him, that first pop went off.
Doyle turned to see Sergeant Walsh drop to the ground.
At that point, I just went into doing what I wasn't supposed to, and that's grab Nick.
But that wasn't standard operating procedure, or SOP.
The SOP is that somebody's been shot, the best medicine is superior firepower, but at the same time, when you see one of your brother shot and bleeding, sometimes SOPs don't make sense. Sometimes you have to do what you gotta do to save your brother.
I want to become a reconnaissance.
Craig DiMartino traveled to Utah to meet Buck Doyle and to learn firsthand why the platoon sergeant made the choice to help Walsh.
What were you thinking in your head, or was it a thing? Was it even a thought? Why did you not do that?
When you work up in a team or a platoon, over time, you develop that brotherly bond, that love.
Right.
If you see someone that you love injured or in harm's way or hurt, all that goes out the window. You're going to his aid no matter what. What I saw was one of my brothers hurt, and I was right there, and I was going to do something about it.
More sniper rounds impacted around Doyle and Walsh.
I'm not surprised that Buck made the decision to do everything he could to save Nick, because you're simply not going to leave an individual out there alone.
It wouldn't have mattered if it was Nick or me or a new private. If he was one of Buck's guys, Buck would have been out there dragging him back.
The sniper's next shot found its target. This time, it was Doyle. Without warning, an enemy sniper opened fire on Sergeant Nick Walsh and Gunnery Sergeant Buck Doyle. As Walsh collapsed to the ground, Doyle stepped into the line of fire to pull his fellow warrior to safety. Then, a sniper round struck Doyle's chest body armor and ricocheted into his leg.
Going into that situation, you felt like you were Superman.
Right.
But now all of a sudden you get hit.
Right.
What were you feeling at that realization?
Yeah, it's hard to describe it in words. It felt like eternity. I'm realizing how vulnerable I am. No one could have told me in a million years that was a card hand I was going to play one day. And boom, it's there.
The sniper had zeroed in on Doyle and fired again.
So at that point, I'm on the ground trying to regain my bearing. My arm is twisted up like a Muppet.
Get Nick. They got it.
Doyle was severely wounded, but he still focused on saving Walsh.
It's okay.
Somebody get Nick.
They got him. They got him. Go, 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 go.
The Marines loaded Doyle and Walsh into Humvees and rushed them to the hospital back at camp.
And it wasn't until after my first surgery I came to inside a recovery room, and I had my platoon around me. I remember the first thing I asked is, "Where's Nick?" And they all looked at me. And no one said anything.
And that's what I do.
Sergeant Nick Walsh died on the battlefield shortly after being hit. There on that hospital bed, Doyle realized that it really wasn't the shattered arm or fractured leg that hurt him. His real pain came from an unseen injury.
Up until that point, I went through my Marine Corps career and all the schools and the gunfights prior to that and all the missions. I was unstoppable. And then all of a sudden I get hit with a bullet and watch one of my brothers die. And I was starting to realize and understand what kryptonite feels like when you're Superman. And it was a horrible feeling.
Doyle's thoughts then turned to his wife.
When you're sitting there, it seems like forever. I remember specifically just wondering, you know, did I say I love? Did I tell my wife that I loved her the last time we talked?
Here you go, Gunny.
Thanks.
We'll be right outside if you need anything.
Later on that day, they brought me a phone in, and I called the wife.
Hello? Buck?
As soon as I heard his voice, I knew it wasn't the same as the other calls. He said, "I need you to listen to me."
Got banged up. She goes, "What do you mean banged up?" I said, "Well, I got shot."
You know, how bad are you going to be okay? And I just wanted to know that he was going to live.
The thing is,
But then there was a really distinct shift in his voice.
I lost one of my guys.
I heard the crack in his voice, and it really changed. And at that point, I was more worried about his heart and his head than I was his physical well-being.
Buck?
I'm still here.
Because I knew that for him, losing one of his guys, that was the worst thing that could happen, and probably one of the toughest places that he could be in.
For the seasoned leader, coming to terms with losing one of his Marines, a valuable warrior and a dear friend, became the most torturous wound to heal.
Gunny, I got this.
On May 26, 2007, a sniper killed Marine Sergeant Nick Walsh and then put his crosshairs on Gunnery Sergeant Buck Doyle. Rounds hit Doyle in his leg and his arm, but Doyle didn't die. But if Doyle was ever to lead Marines into combat again, he would have to heal not only those physical injuries, but an emotional trauma as well.
How hard was that to reconcile in your head?
I had 8 days to walk around. My arms cut open. I got tubes going in. I got a wound vac hooked to me. I'm going to the bathroom, and you look in the mirror, and it just hits me. For the first time, I'm looking at myself in the mirror with all this. And it all started hitting me, you know. Am I going to return to the battlefield? Am I still that guy? Am I that guy that can go in harm's way and still perform at that level with no hesitation? That is a scary question to ask yourself, because I couldn't see any resemblance of that guy in the mirror.
Right.
I knew internally, be able to see that guy, it's in here. And that's when Kalik tells me, hey,
You need to get back in the fight. You need
gotta
to heal up.
and you gotta get back in the fight. And at that moment, she just confirmed that, yes, I need to get back out there.
And you know, when you turned to me and he said,
Kyla, I need to tell you that I'm sorry.
and I said, why are you sorry? And he said, you know,
Because in that moment, when everything happened,
I knew I was standing there in the line of fire and that I was going to get shot and that I probably would get killed.
I didn't hesitate. I didn't
He felt guilty that that was a choice he was making, and he knew he had a wife and kids at home. I said, if you hadn't made that choice, then you wouldn't have been the man that I married. The guy that turned around to help Nick and the guy who was willing to sacrifice his life for his fellow Marine, that's the guy that I married. If you hadn't made it back because of that, I could live with that and I could tell your children about that. You have to keep living your life doing what you know is right.
For 2 years, Doyle worked hard towards full recovery, and in 2009, he was given a chance to join another Marine unit heading to Afghanistan. He took it, and alongside fellow Marines, he proved to himself that he could still do his job in combat.
I had my mojo back, but remember what kryptonite felt like was always there. So every step forward I took knowing the consequences. I lived it, whether it's me getting hurt or someone else getting hurt.
Right.
I knew what that was like, where before, train hard, get out there and get some.
Buck was the epitome of what a warrior is, what a gunfighter is. That guy that was never going to quit and never going to stop until the fight was won.
I don't think we're put here in life to learn from easy. I think we're here to learn from hard. So the obstacles are there to learn. Sometimes you just pray that you learn them fast so that the obstacles can be over.
Buck Doyle retired from the Marine Corps in 2010 as a Master Sergeant after 21 and a half years of service. Today, he owns a company called Follow Through Consulting that provides, among many things, expert firearms training for qualified civilians, law enforcement, and U.S. military.
If you look off to your right, have a few targets out there on the cliffs.
Craig DiMartino visited the range for a bit of what Buck does best. And it was no surprise to find Buck's 2 daughters hitting 12-inch steel targets at 500 meters.
You've kind of taken it upon you to teach them guns from a very young age. Why is that important to you to give them that?
There's a discipline in handling a firearm. There's safety, but then there's also an art to be able to perform with the firearm. That builds confidence.
Absolutely.
To me, it's an awesome feeling.
Yeah,
it's awesome to watch. Lean into it so you can kind of stable that position and manage recoil.
Then, Craig tried his hand with a LaRue carbine.
When you squeeze that trigger back, realign your sights. That starts our follow through. Nice. Now you know your hold.
Something I've noticed as you're kind of moving your hand is, tell me about your bracelet.
The hero bracelet is my reminder of Nick. So basically it has his full name, his rank, the unit we served, 1st Recon Battalion together. And the day he passed away. So Nick was always off to my left. Every time we did a hit, we did recce patrols, we did convoys, he was right there. So I keep a reminder of him on my left side and in everything I do.
That's fantastic.